Seinfeld, a show about nothing, yet somehow everything. For nearly a decade, it entertained millions with quirky humor, awkward social interactions, and a cast of characters that made New York feel both surreal and relatable at the same time. But in the world of Kramer's crazy antics and George's neurotic outbursts, there exists an urban legend that was recently confirmed, an episode so unsettling that it never made it to air. When Seinfeld first aired in 1989, no one could have predicted the cultural phenomenon it would become. With its pilot episode, The Seinfeld Chronicles, audiences were introduced to a quirky, understated sitcom that wasn't quite sure what it wanted to be. The first season was short, just 5 episodes, and it leaned heavily on observational humor, reflecting the real-life stand-up career of its star, Jerry Seinfeld. At its core, the show presented an unconventional approach to sitcoms. No dramatic character arcs, no moral lessons, and no central plot driving each episode. The first season of Seinfeld focused on laying the foundation of what would later become iconic television. Jerry, George, and Kramer, initially called Kessler in the pilot, were established as everyday New Yorkers navigating life's awkward moments. The show was notably absent of the female lead, Elaine, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who would join in the second episode of Season 2. The humor was more observational, with entire scenes dedicated to the minutiae of life. Conversations about laundry, dating woes, and the oddities of New York City. However, despite its wit and sharp writing, the show struggled to find a large audience. Critics were intrigued, but the show had not yet found its rhythm. By the time Season 2 began airing in early 1991, Seinfeld had already started to evolve. The writing became sharper, and the show leaned more heavily on its situational humor, something that would eventually define the series. Season 2 featured standout episodes like The Chinese Restaurant and The Jacket, showing how Seinfeld was beginning to experiment with more elaborate storylines while still focusing on everyday situations. It was in this season that the infamous Lost episode was rumored to be scheduled. Supposedly, this episode was planned early for the second season, but it was pulled by the co-creator Larry David for being too disturbing. The script for the episode, titled The Bet, was leaked in early 2024. However, people online believed it was most likely fan-made. That was until the writer of the script, Larry Charles, admitted that was indeed the lost episode of Seinfeld that never aired. "I haven't gone through it page by page, but it looks real, including my penciled-in revisions," Charles told the Daily Beast. "I still have my original table-read copy with the cover. From looking at the first few pages, it seemed funnier than I remember, but very hard-edged. The Bet, which may have been retitled The Gun if it had made it to air, was the script that Larry David deemed too morbid to film. Dated September 1990, the script sees Elaine worried about an uptick in crime in the city and deciding to purchase a firearm. While she instead opts for a toy gun, the conversation around the use of a real gun continues. Jerry, meanwhile, greets Elaine's ambitions with badgering, saying Elaine using a gun would just add to the chaos. The side storyline involving George and Kramer show the two being less concerned with the gun than in debating whether Kramer is telling the truth over having a romance with a flight attendant. The episode was originally titled The Bet because George and Kramer's side plot had them betting whether or not Kramer's romance with the flight attendant was true. The script apparently made it all the way to the table read, but it was at that point where the plot seemed to die on the vine. Charles later said he thought he was unsuccessful in bringing enough levity to the plot, which was inspired by a Seinfeld staffer named Elaine Pope considering a gun purchase. "I can't remember if she was contemplating buying a gun or whether she had already bought a gun," Charles said, "but she felt very justified in buying the gun and would defend that position. And it was also at a time when that was a subject that was finding its way into the media, women buying guns. And I thought that was kind of fascinating. And I think it was as simple as me wondering, what if Elaine bought a gun?" In the end, the episode titled The Bet didn't go over well with the cast or director Tom Chironis. After the read-through, the cast told Chironis they weren't comfortable moving forward. Julia Louis-Dreyfus stated, "I read the script, and I remember thinking, we're not going to do this." To fill the gap, Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David wrote, "The phone message in 2 days," where George frantically tries to retrieve the tape from his girlfriend's answering machine. Ironically, this lost episode has some weird connections to the overall lore of Seinfeld, even though it was never filmed. Included in the script, outside of the gun talk, was originally supposed to be the first reveal of Kramer's first name. While it would eventually take until season 6 for Kramer's name to be disclosed as Cosmo, in The Bet, the character's full name was Conrad Kramer. Also, in a twist of fate, it was not the episode The Bet, but a bet between the legendary 4 friends that skyrocketed the show to success. In the world of Seinfeld, everything was fair game. Close talkers, soup Nazis, even the proper etiquette for breaking up. But the episode The Bet represents a fascinating what if in the world of television, an episode that could have pushed Seinfeld into a much darker and more controversial space. Yet, in true Seinfeld fashion, the episode that never aired has become part of the show's folklore, a ghostly punchline to a joke no one will ever hear. Perhaps that's the ultimate irony of The Bet. It is the episode that crossed a line by never crossing it at all.